I'm Charlotte Ikels. I'm Ezra's wife of 41 years, and I'm in the house that we lived in for 41 years. He was really very good at bringing people together, and I think people also saw this very much in the way he conducted his research. He was very, very personable in interviews. People were just very, very happy to talk with him. And it's true, he was very outgoing from even when I knew him at the very beginning as a researcher. His father owned the People's Store in Delaware, Ohio, and Ezra worked in the store occasionally and was very happy. He always greeted people, so he was outgoing from a very early age. But it doesn't explain everything, like his skill at interviewing. And just a few days ago, when I was preparing his library for its donation to Aichi University, and all of a sudden I came across one piece of paper, well, actually a small manual, and it was a 1950s Army manual training psychiatric social work technicians in how to interview Army people who had been sent to Valley Forge Army Hospital, which is, Ezra had been drafted for the Korean War, and he had been a sociology major in college and also had a sociology master's degree, and you know, the Army and many other people link sociology to social work. So he was assigned to be a psychiatric social work technician. So I read the manual, and it talked about how to set the person at ease, don't be judgmental, and so forth. So it was very interesting, and I realized, my gosh, you know, that was his first training in social work. I don't think he had official training in college. And he went from that to a doctoral program at Harvard in 1953. And when you're a doctoral student, you usually need to have some kind of financial support. So he was attached to a research project looking at the family dynamics of Irish and Italian families in the greater Boston area, and how they dealt with having a child with mental illness in the family. And boom, you know, this would be very, very sensitive interviewing, and he did it. So he was acquiring all of this experience, and then off he went to Japan in 1958 and began interviewing again as a research skill. So I just thought that was a very interesting find. Ezra was much more than an interviewer, of course. He did a lot of writing and teaching, but I think he was also very much concerned with public service. He did serve in Washington in 93, 95 in the Clinton administration, dealing with writing analytical papers for the National Intelligence Council, which was part of what the president would read every morning, which happens to be in the news these days. But Ezra, in 2019, he had two writing projects that he was working on sort of simultaneously, juggling them. One was trying to restart the Huyaobang project, and the other was completing, or I should say starting and getting into an autobiography. But he put all of that aside because the election was coming up, and he was very concerned with the downswing in US-China relations. And so he began to work with Graham Allison at the Harvard Kennedy School to develop a policy paper with recommendations on what the incoming administration should do in terms of trying to turn around things with China. He had put a lot of the writing aside in order to do that, and unfortunately he was not able to finish that paper due to his untimely death. This is a little shrine to Ezra. A lot of people may wonder why there are so many birds around, but the name Vogel actually means bird in German. That's not the reason we have these birds, but it happens to be a happy coincidence. So this is the same picture that was on the book Remembering Ezra Vogel. Ezra's actually present. This is the room where people would come and eat. This table spreads out, and the Juku situation is usually that Ezra would have 2 meetings a day, 2 days in a given week, and 8 times a year. So we really scrambled. Also, the Chinese sociology group, which was the graduate students working on China at Harvard, also ate here. I should say a little bit about the Juku. Some of you may be familiar with the Matsushita School that was founded in Japan when Mr. Matsushita was very interested in developing young leadership. And Ezra and I actually visited Mr. Matsushita at his office. And Ezra was really inspired by that idea. And so quite some time later, in the middle 1990s, when Japan's economy had kind of slumped, Ezra began to think about how can Japan be reinvigorated. And he thought the next generation of Japanese leaders would play a very important role in this. And so he was able to put together a group which eventually became self-sustaining. The members of the group picked their successors to come to the Juku. And the Juku would be divided, again, they self-selected to be in particular interest groups. One might be interested in social welfare, somebody might be interested in international relations, somebody interested in the economy. And the students who were interested in this would get together. I mean, they were students, many of them actually were employed in the area. And each week, two of the groups would present one day and two of the groups would present the other day. And they really had to think. They actually had to make a presentation in that other room. So hopefully those young people are now not quite so young and are in positions of influence and are trying to carry through on Ezra's goal to help Japan move along. Of course, the room was set up very differently when he had the Juku here. The couch would have been over there, a whole bunch of chairs would have filled in here, Ezra would have sat here with whoever from the Juku group was presenting, and they would come here after having had dinner, sort of a dinner, very casual dinner. The Japanese brought the pizza and Ezra provided the sushi. Regrettably, that sushi place is almost closed, but it's still getting by. I have here, I know that this is going to be shown at the Ezra Vogel Commemorative Forum, and I just thought you might like to see a lot of the memorabilia about Ezra that has already come around. Shortly after he died, a number of his students said, "We don't want to forget Ezra." So fortunately, there were two people who leaped to the task, former colleagues from the sociology department, Marty White and Mary Brinton. And they put together this book, Remembering Ezra Vogel, with contributions by 155 people who know him from many other parts of his life. And it comes completely with pictures, including, here's a wedding picture of us taken, many years ago. Aichi University also. I think Chun-Li Lee put together an interesting book that's probably available to you right now. And also a Japanese who's fluent in Chinese interviewed him extensively and put together this book. This is by Yoshikazu Kato. In addition, of course, almost 2 years after Ezra passed, we actually had his celebration of life at the church on Harvard Yard, the same church where Ezra and I were married. And following that, the Asia Center put on a large panel. So Ezra is being remembered. Of course, the family is very happy to know that Aichi University is kind enough to take Ezra's library. Hi, this is Ezra's study. This is his chair. So his books are quite a mess here. I've kind of cleaned these out preparatory for Aichi University to take. And to my surprise, while filing through a whole bunch of papers here, I found on this very shelf a draft for his book on Huyaobang. But it's a draft that was written in 2015. He let that sit aside for a while he worked on his book on China and Japan facing history. And his expectation was when he finished this book, he would resume working on Huyaobang. And he also was simultaneously working on an autobiography. And we are looking around for the pieces of that in his digital file. Somebody is coming in a couple of weeks to index his digital files, so hopefully we will find a more current Huyaobang update, and maybe that big project could actually come to fruition. We don't know. But to refill this shelf, I brought out a bunch of books by Ezra, some co-authored with other people. So they are here, as well as a few books that were in a different shelf that Aichi was not originally going to take. So I hope everything works out here. Of course, this is only the immediate library. There is the back library that I think you'll see shortly. These are really very, very mixed books. The ones that you saw earlier in his study are very much his teaching library, except for the one section that also includes the research library. Many of these books are books he actually used in college, not most, but a number are. So in total, there were 25 bookcases, and you can see that they are numbered, preparatory to being taken out and organized.